In this video, I wanted to share something fun that I did recently, and that was a Draw This in Your Style challenge. This challenge was inspired by an artist whose name is Aker, art maker on YouTube, and she was heavily inspired by Sophie McPike's Draw This in Your Style YouTube video. So I will be linking both of those videos in the description so you can check them out and see the inspiration for this piece. So this definitely was a challenge for me for a lot of reasons. I really haven't done just kind of an original composition in a while. I usually just paint based off of reference. So in this piece, I was really inspired by some of the elements of Sophie McPike's painting or drawing, and I was also inspired by some of the elements of Sam's drawing as well. So for Sophie McPike's piece, I really liked the woman in the center with the bird, and I loved that she was this curvy woman. She was joyful. She had these really cute bubble braids. And so I wanted to find a reference for a character or a person to draw on this piece that kind of exemplified that joyfulness. I looked around on the internet. I did find this YouTuber, so I'll put her link in the video as well, and she just had the most wonderful, joyful expression, and I really wanted to capture that. So I did do an initial sketch in my sketchbook. I gotta say, you'll probably see above that I tried to do Loomis method to draw this face, and I need to study that. I tend to elongate my figures and drawings perspective wise, and I still managed to do that even while trying to use the Loomis method. So I did sketch this freehand, and obviously it turned out a lot better somehow. But knowing that this was going to be like a one and done, like I wasn't going to be able to replicate how good this sketch looked in my opinion, that I just made a trace of it, and then I did multiple tracings of this woman on the papers. And so I have like a few different pieces of paper for scrap and for testing paint colors and for trying to decide my design, because I didn't know still what my design was going to be. So you can see that I've made an initial trace of the woman, and I've put her in the bottom corner. And the reason why I put her in the bottom corner is because I kind of want the rest of the components of the piece to kind of come from behind her. I started to think that I really wanted her to be expressing joy by looking at art or listening to music, and definitely music came to mind because I wanted to put music notes like around her, and I did wind up scrapping that idea, but I did initially think this expression that she had made me think of, oh, she must be listening to music. So I tried to simplify this sketch so you can see she looks a little bit more stylized and less like a really accurate, realistic interpretation of a person. But I hope that I've captured the essence of her. I was really nervous about this actually, drawing people and drawing real people, right? You want to represent them accurately. And when I got to like things like skin tone and stuff like that, I really wanted to be mindful that I was trying to represent this person accurately. So I had some really bright Paul Rubens watercolors. They're like neon, and I always am itching to kind of play with them. You can see on the palette how bright some of those are. I don't use the orange. I was really tempted to use like the bright yellow and bright orange neon, and I think they might actually even glow in black light. But I was playing around with my scrap sheet, and I was making different shapes of flowers and trying to decide what shape I was gonna use. And I'll show a piece of my scrap sheet where I just was kind of just playing around. And I decided on these purple flowers and like a little kind of little drawing in the middle to show like the little parts, inside parts of the flower. And I decided, I was like, okay, well, how many flowers do I want to do? I don't want this composition to be like super cluttered or whatever. So I started looking at like biblical number meanings and astrological number meanings. And then, I don't know, it just hit me. Obviously, I needed to do 7 purple flowers. And if you know, you know why I picked 7 purple flowers. Again, it's music related, so put in the comments if you know why I put 7 purple flowers. That's a fun little trivia quiz for you. But I really like how these flowers came out. I just took my brush and just lightly made the petals, and then you'll see later that I do an outline because I do want this piece to look kind of sketchy and really focus a lot on lines, because I feel like lines are prominent in the work of like Sam and Sophie. You can see a scrap sheet in progress where I figured out the flowers fine. I got the flowers down, and then you can see where I put the music notes, thinking like I put these like squiggly lines and kind of similar to the other pieces. And then I thought, oh, it would be great to have music notes there, and I kind of like how it looked. And then I drew these birds, and I don't know what the heck is up with these birds, but I did not like them one bit. So I decided to scrap this iteration of the composition and start over again. So in this part, I've retraced the woman in the corner, and now I am doing these curving kind of interlocking lines. And I did use Sam's tip to draw with my shoulder, because I did not know that it improves your like flexibility. I did notice that that it was kind of easier to put these lines in by using my shoulder instead of my wrist to draw. And you'll see eventually I go back to the wrist because, you know, old habits die hard. But I think if I were to master this technique, I'd be unstoppable. Because A, it's kind of fun to try it, and B, I do think I had more control over my lines doing this part of the piece. So I thank you, Sam, for the tip. And this time around with the flowers, I decided to be a little extra and drop in some of this bright pink paint in the center of the flowers. So I always love that technique when I see other watercolor artists doing it. I just love when the paint blends perfectly with other colors in the water. It's kind of one of my favorite features of watercolor. So I definitely played around with that this time, for sure. So as I mentioned, I wasn't a big fan of the birds I drew, and I did kind of rush myself to figure it out quickly. So I decided to kind of incorporate Sam's birds, and they were part of the inspiration that wanted me to start working on this piece anyway, so I didn't want to copy them completely, of course, but I did make them quite similar and kind of adjust the shapes and stuff like that. You can see I kind of left out the curly Q part, but I really like the shape of them. And I was really trying not to make them look like fish, but I don't know if I succeeded in that part, me personally. I think they look more like fish to me, with wings sometimes. But I tried to draw them from different angles and perspectives, and so I did try to change that up a little bit as well, just to, you know, make it my own in a way. Composition-wise, I struggle with composition, I suppose, and I was trying to think of at least like some drawing elements that were like technical, that had some sort of technical know-how. So I did try to have like lines receding, you know, I tried to have the birds changing in size the further back they went or the higher up they went, and the flowers to kind of go from bigger to smaller. So that wasn't like an intentional choice on my part to kind of show space and show depth, but you know, I don't know if I accomplished it. You'll have to let me know. At this point, I was just kind of having fun anyway, but I did want to try and think about the fundamentals as I was working on this and see if I could apply something to the piece like that. So now I'm in the process of taking ink and outlining everything so it's kind of cohesive with the woman. So this was a long and arduous process. I will speed this up. And I can tell you my wrist definitely hurt by the end of this. There was a lot of line making and in this part of it. And I did decide to change the line thickness for different elements of the piece, and I did, like for the flowers, tend to go with the like a number 2 Micron pen, and I think the birds are like an 8 or something like that. So I did use different Micron pens for different line thicknesses, and then I did kind of go over lines over and over again too to kind of change the thickness as well. So back to my scrap paper, and you can see where I played a lot with the lines and made them kind of flowy and stuff, but the lines obviously at the end of me working on them were like a little bit more clean and structured. So you can see me playing around with dropping blue into green and green into blue because I'm getting ready to decide like how I'm going to paint in the birds. And I wanted to emulate that kind of splotchy watercolor texture that Sam used for their birds. So here I am, I'm dropping the paint in, doing wet on wet, and kind of getting that splotchy feeling, and then going back in and defining in some like dark areas and stuff like that. I'm pretty fond of how the birds turned out, and so I think I did kind of capture that texture that was being used in Sam's piece with my technique. So I was very, very happy with that for sure. So I really want to stop and appreciate how the piece looks at this moment, and I feel like I did this during every phase, when I added the flowers, when I added the birds, and then when I start on the woman, and then when I get to the lines, most definitely I've I have this like feeling of anxiety, like, oh, this is the moment where I'm gonna mess it up and I'm gonna have to start all over. And so I think, oh, do I want to add color here? Maybe I should just leave it black and white, because stylistically that's a choice too. I could just make the flowers and birds the only elements of color here, and everything else could be black and white, and that would be a perfectly acceptable way to leave it. But I do decide to carry on. For the woman, I didn't want to go super bright like I did with the birds and the flowers, so I switched to my regular Paul Rubens palette from here on and just filled in kind of like, you know, standard colors. And also, obviously, I wanted to capture her skin tones as accurately as I could. I'm not a master at watercolor painting, let alone watercolor painting people. So again, I want to reiterate that I did my very, very best to be respectful of all the amazing colors that go into a person's skin tone, and be respectful of that, and to be respectful of kind of like the essence of their character. So that was really, really important to me. So that's why I keep saying it. So I kept the shirt pretty basic. I didn't really want to focus on the shirt too much, but I did try to fill in color and just kind of give it some depth there. And then I get into the skin tone, and I do a lot of layering here. I try to start light. I try to leave those really bright spaces on her cheeks and on the right side of her face, because that's where the light's coming from in the reference. And so I very diligently layered and layered, and then I would let it dry, and I'd be like, okay, do I want to do more? And I kept finding like the shadows on her face were kind of more bluish or purplish and cool, and so I wanted to make sure that I was able to capture that. But her skin tone was quite warm, so I also wanted to layer it enough and put enough warmth in there that you could see the warmth on her face as well, in addition to the cooler shadows on the left side of her face. So I have one of my scrap sheets the first time I did this character, or this woman, and it turned out really, really good, except I did go one layer too far on it. But at this point, I had already known that this was just going to be my scrap paper, so I wasn't stressing about that. But it was a good test, right? So learning to test and plan, like I've mentioned in the past, I don't plan very well. This is probably the most planning I've done for a painting ever. And so again, the challenges, it was a challenge. And I really enjoyed the process of challenging myself to like plan and test and execute a piece. And even though it took me like 3 tries, I did wind up being really, really satisfied with it in the end. So then I fill in her hair, and I do try to put a lot of layers on that too and kind of capture the texture. And she's got these big bubbles, and I didn't want to go like super detailed. Obviously, that's not what I'm going for here, but I did want to capture that texture in her hair as well. And I can't help myself, I had to put some shine on it. So I have these glittery watercolors, and I'm pretty sure I bought them on Etsy. And so if I can go through my Etsy history and figure out where I bought these watercolors, I will certainly share them, because they are really good to work with. I really like these a lot, and I tend to add them to a fair amount of my work. So I do go in, and the original person that did the video has these gold accents in her bubble braids. So I add some gold in the braids, and then gold for her earrings. And that's it. I didn't go crazy. I just wanted to accent some parts of the piece with the gold elements there. So I did that. Just when I think I'm done messing with this face, I go back in. I just can't stop myself. So another thing that I liked is that I did try to do like a little bit of blending of the watercolor at the top of her hairline to kind of show the baby hairs on her forehead. And I think I like how that turned out. I think I tried like a little bit more detailed before, and I liked that too, but I'm pretty happy that it didn't like ruin my technique didn't ruin the essence of like showing those baby hairs on her forehead. So I think I like that part. So getting to the background, I wasn't sure if I was going to fill in the background, but I did decide that I wanted to just have this just full of color. So I went in and I started doing a blue background for this piece. And I tried to make it darker at the top and lighter at the bottom. So just trying to be mindful of kind of your standard watercolor rules, so to speak, or, color rules in terms of, the sky and all of that stuff. So that's pretty much all I have to say about the background, except maybe I am using that kind of like splotchy brush technique that I tend to use, and I just like how it looks because it leaves a lot of like lighter spaces or white spaces and in the background. So I do like that, how the background looked again. So now again, I'm asking myself, okay, do I want to fill in these lines? It's the last part of this piece. Do I want to completely fill this in and have like no black and white? It's going to be completely color. And I say yes, why the heck not at this point? Let me go for it. So I do another test swatch because again, I don't want to do that neon yellow or neon orange. I think that might be a little bit too much here. Like I want to go with the retro-y orange and yellow that are in Sophie McPike's piece. So I dug out some Kuretake paints. I don't use them often. I don't know why. I feel like when I used them the first time, there was something I didn't really like about them. They reactivate very, very easily. And that is actually a benefit in a lot of ways. And I did a flower piece recently and I used my Kuretakes for that. And I loved how easy it was to reactivate the colors and move them around on the paper. So I don't know why I stopped using them, but I'm going to bring the Kuretakes out more often now. They do, like I said, they work a little bit different from your regular watercolor, but they do have their benefits. And in this case, the benefit was the color. So I really liked the yellow and the orange in the set. And I think that they matched that retro-y color vibe that I was kind of going for these lines. So you'll see I'm filling that in with the Kuretakes there. Also, when I was planning this part of the piece, the color, I'm not a digital girly by any means, but my wife actually had a brilliant idea. And we've been talking about me having like some digital elements kind of help me sketch out compositions and stuff like that. But for now, the economy being as it is, current life circumstances, I don't really want to invest a lot in digital software or equipment. So I did download Procreate on my iPhone, and that was $6 one-time license fee, and that actually was super, super helpful. So you'll see that I went on Procreate and I uploaded my picture. And then I could see where I had like gaps in the lines because I was trying to fill in with color and it wouldn't fill in. It would like fill in the whole paper. So that actually helped me, for one, connect the lines on my painting to make sure that they really were connecting with other parts of the painting, if you know what I mean. And then I kind of took the color swatches and I would fill in the lines where I could, just so I could see if I liked the color combination on the painting. So I really did like it, and that's why I decided to go with adding the yellow and the orange to the painting. In the end, the only thing I left not in color were the clouds, and I like it. I'm really surprised at myself at how I was able to come up with this complete composition and just play around with different ideas and then execute it in a way that in the end, from beginning to end, while I was nervous about what I was doing, I think turned out to be an accurate representation of what I wanted to portray on paper. I hope that other people will be inspired to pick up their pens and papers and do one of these draw this in your style challenges, because I definitely want to do more of these. I like just getting out of my creative box and just making something for the fun of it. I mean, I do all art for the fun of it, right? But just something completely different for me that I'm not used to doing. So with that, I hope to see you in the comments. Let me know what you think of this piece. What would you have done differently, or how would you have represented those art pieces yourself? I'm curious to know. So I'll see you in the comments, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video as well. And with that, I will say goodbye. Bye.